Hello, everyone. I am Lisette Monterroso, and I am the on-site coordinator for the Puebla, Mexico program. We are excited to feature a new faculty exchange program with UPAEP, one of our partners in Mexico. This spring, we had our first exchange, and I want to introduce the Notre Dame faculty member who spent the semester here in Puebla, and the UPAEP faculty member who spent her spring semester on our ND campus. So Abigail Villagran Mora has a PhD in composition and applied linguistics for the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. She's founding director of UPAEP's Writing Center, the first to be certified by the College of Reading and Learning Association in Latin America, and a founding member of the Mexican Writing Centers Network. She's a full-time professor at the UPAEP's College Language and Cultural Diversity. Elena Mangione Lora has a St. Mary's College Bachelor in Spanish and French and a Notre Dame Master in Spanish Literature. She is a full teaching professor of Spanish language and culture in the University of Notre Dame's Department of Romance Languages and Literature. Thank you both for being here and for accepting to be interviewed by us. So my first question to both of you will be, why did you want to participate in this program?
We first started discussing this program, I think 3 years ago. That was before the pandemic. And I think the basic reasons remained the same, but some of them got reinforced over the passing of the years, and other reasons came forward as well. But mostly in my case, I was interested in participating and having the experience of working with a different academic culture, learning about how things are done, and also having the experience to teach a different population of students was important for me. I also wanted to have different insights about my teaching practice, because having taught in UPAEP for more than 10 years now, I think it's very healthy for teachers to have these experiences in other universities, and in this case, in a different country with different academic cultures. So I was interested in getting that feedback on my teaching practice. And finally, and most importantly, I guess, having the opportunity to collaborate with international peers. So people who are working with similar things in a different context and with a lot of experience on their side. So that was my primary motivation.
Perfect. Thank you.
I want to echo a lot of the things that Abby said. For me too, the renewal that comes with being nudged out of your comfort zone was really important. I've been at Notre Dame for 25 years. I read, I try to travel, but it's the lived learning is a different experience. And so the opportunity to live in Puebla, to live, as Abby said, a different academic culture, to sort of have to navigate unexpected problems or challenges, that was one of the main attractions. Part of it too, for me, was the fact that we send so many, we prepare our students to study abroad in UPAEP specifically, and in Toledo and in Chile. But I wanted to have a sense of what that academic and student atmosphere was like. So what are the facilities like? What are the professors like? What is the pedagogy there? What kinds of dynamics in student life are there that maybe I wasn't thinking about when I was trying to prepare them, promote the program, those kinds of things here at Notre Dame. So those are some of the main reasons. And as Abby said, just the opportunity to share interests and sort of grow from other perspectives and those kinds of things. Yeah, so those were all reasons.
Perfect. Thank you for your answers. And I think that you have begun talking a little bit about your experience as well. So can we hear a little bit more about that? How was your experiences? I'm sorry.
I'll start with that one. If you, it was wonderful. The experience was an incredible experience. First of all, Puebla is a beautiful city, beautiful, diverse, exciting, complicated, interesting. So just being there was already wonderful. The students were absolutely lovely. There were some challenges that we kind of took on together, and that process was really wonderful. A lot of goodwill that took us to where we needed to go in ways that we didn't expect on the front end. The faculty at UPAEP was welcoming, kind, supportive, knowledgeable, amazing. The facilities were great. The internet was kind of rough, but that brought its own sort of set of challenges to work with. So I would say that the experience was absolutely magnificent, despite knowing or seeing firsthand some of the warts, if you will, poverty and violence and some of the underbelly of it all. Being able to recognize that and understand that in a more profound way was also a gratifying experience, even though it was difficult. But it was really a powerful experience, I think. Sorry to jump in, Abby.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a powerful experience for me as well. I've never been in Indiana before, and certainly not in South Bend. And for me, it was, I think I can summarize the whole experience with two words: a community building experience and a collaborative experience in multiple levels. So I learned about how students build a sense of community in Notre Dame. For me, the new thing that I've never experienced is this like campus living experience that we don't have exactly like that in Mexico, and I didn't have studying in the US either. And I think it's very inherent to Notre Dame academic culture, that community building sense, and every student talks about it a lot, and you see this sense of belonging. It's like and it's natural to every student, and where they live and where they eat and what they talk about. It's all about belonging together in this community. And I also felt this with the closest faculty members that I got the opportunity to work with, how they shared their interest, how they shared their strategies, and also they shared similar issues. And they had this, I won't say prescripted, but this culture of solving issues together. That was also an interesting thing to look at. And ultimately, how Notre Dame has this more systematized in such a way that they have a really good and concrete way to have impact with the community surrounding the campus and beyond, right? So I learned a lot about community-based learning and the more intentional approaches to have a good impact outside of Notre Dame. And especially for me, I guess the treat was learning how to connect that with learning within the classroom and outside the classroom, and how to engage students beyond what's this time, yes, prescripted in their syllabi, right? So I really liked to have this experience. Having this experience really helped me think through similar issues that I didn't know I had in many ways. So it was really exciting in that sense.
Perfect, thank you. So after talking and listening to you, I think that you have already begun talking about the work that you have been doing in each of the sites. So could you deep a little bit more about the work with the students? How is the difference perhaps in the work that you are doing with the you were doing in this with the students here in Puebla, Elena, compared with the students you work at Notre Dame? And the same, Abby, what is the experience that you had working with the American students rather than your regular Mexican students? Who wants to begin? Abby?
Okay. Yeah.
Elena.
Well, one thing that was refreshing and exciting for me was something that Florence, who's the dean of the college, she sat down with me at the beginning and she said, you know, here in Mexico, having a second language is part of a basic education. It's not a bonus. Having a third or fourth language, that's a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And that was exciting to hear, and something that I just want to share over and over. It'll be an anecdote in my arsenal of anecdotes, you know, with my students, because as you know, Notre Dame has very socially conscious, very academically prepared, very reflective, very students with strong academic skills, strong preparation, and an intense desire to do good in the world. And yet, in the culture that surrounds them, they don't have access to some of these attitudes about, well, actually, specifically what Abby teaches about, the program that Abby created, which is global perspectives. We know something about the world. We've read some of the great intellectuals, but a truly global perspective, whatever you do with it, that's, you know, that comes later, but having access to understanding how others see the world. I think in Mexico, there is more of a sense of needing to look outward to explore ideas and ways of doing things and so on. And I think that the US in some ways tends to be a bit more insular as far as that goes. And so it was very exciting to work with the young people in Mexico to sort of to have them teach me about that new perspective so that I can take it to Notre Dame and say, hey, look at this. This is something really neat. What can we do with this? So in terms of working with students in general, satisfying, beautiful, wonderful work in both countries, I have to say. But some of those fresh perspectives can be really enriching when we bring them back.
Perfect. And Elena, can I ask you, could you tell us a little bit about the students from Notre Dame that you were able to work with?
Yeah, we had a special group of students this spring, a very, very in tune, reflective group of students. And one of the great joys of this last semester was being able to sit with them and ask them questions and have them ask me questions and sort of look at Notre Dame with a loving, critical eye, in a way, look at their Notre Dame education with a loving, critical eye, and to glean insights that will make all of our experiences richer. And I think for the students, the experience was richer for talking to each other and talking with me. And for me, the experience of Mexico was richer in talking to them, for sure. So yes, that was one of the great unexpected gifts of the semester. So, and a lot of that has to do with you're allowing me to have that interaction with them. They said, thank you for that.
You're welcome. We are more thankful for you. Now, Abby, could you share with us your experience?
Sure. Well, I could talk about this for more than an hour, obviously. So I arrived without a particular expectation about how students might be, and I was surprised by many things. One of my surprises, like a good surprise, was how engaged students are with performance. I generally don't have that experience here in Mexico, where students are not as concerned for grades sometimes as you might think. But that's not the case in Notre Dame. So whatever you decide that students should do in class becomes like the center of their attention. So that is very gratifying. So for me, I guess the challenge was balancing that performance-based approach with the interest in the learning experience and what I could bring to the class in terms of culture and my own identity as Mexican. I was teaching Spanish in Notre Dame, and there's been years and years since the last time I taught Spanish. I, I, I actually have more experience teaching English than I do teaching Spanish, ironically. Although I do teach writing. So I really brought together like this, I think, diverse canvas of experiences to class. And it was really interesting for me to become a language teacher in the context of Spanish as a foreign language. And also trying to bring to the class things that they would otherwise not have access to. So for example, something that I was surprised to see is how interested they are in, for instance, Mexican literature, which is one of my degrees. And they didn't have access to that prior to me being in class, because of course there's a lot of Mexican American literature that we need to know and read, but Mexican literature is not often taught in the United States. And I think there's a lot of examples that can work really well in foreign language education. And so I really appreciated having the opportunity to maybe have an effect on students through a cultural approach based on writing and literature. So I had a lot of fun doing that. And I also learned a lot about their own particular way of independent learning and how it differs from independent learners here in Mexico, who are mostly focused on their own particular objectives, whereas in Notre Dame, they all share this performance objective. And it's difficult for a teacher coming from a Mexican experience to kind of like adapt to that, but then they are very helpful also walking you through the way things are done in Notre Dame. So I appreciated that in my students. They're all very friendly and very curious. And so, yeah, I had a great time teaching.
Perfect. Well, we have most of our students, I can say all of them, are very interested in taking literature classes here when they came. They want to take all of them, so it's very difficult to tell them no, just one. Well, and besides the work that you were doing with the students, could you tell me if you were involved in any research on the ground? Elena?
All right, I'll start. In terms of formal research, not so much. The main focus of the exchange for me was the teaching, and again, to use the idea of lived learning, lived research. So I teach a course on Mexican culture, formal Mexican culture, and so in that sense, I did a lot of research, a lot of pertinent research lived research that I can take back to the students. We planted a lot of seeds. So Florence, again, who's the dean of the college, has talked about perhaps writing up an article with Abby and me about the experience of the exchange, and doing those kinds of things. So we planted a lot of seeds, but in terms of, I gave a few presentations, some talks, of course, about immigration and cultural differences and those kinds of things. But as far as formal research, mostly seeds were planted.
Yeah, kind of like the same here. I was able to continue with my research line of interest. And when you're doing research, you're always looking for sources that can help you. And actually, this was a great source of inspiration and motivation and new threads that can lead me maybe to different ways of thinking about my interests. In particular, I work with communities of practice and how they apply to writing centers. And this is a social learning theory. So with Notre Dame being so involved with the community, I naturally became interested in what they had to show me about their experiences and their particular and concrete projects. So looking at it from that perspective and seeing how I can apply it to our social work here in the Writing Center. I also had the opportunity to work with two very important and key persons that I worked with was Rachel Parakin, whom you know from the Center for Social Concerns, and with our community-based learning approach. It really sparkled a lot of ideas in how I teach, but also how I direct the Writing Center. And another important person for me was Dr. Matthew Capdeville from the Writing Center, because they're one of the few writing centers that I know of that also does social and community work, and they've been working with the prison and establishing a writing center there, which I think is really interesting. And we're already talking about opportunities of collaboration and working together, because this social approach to teaching and learning writing is really revolutionary and I think necessary. So I think we are at the moment just sparkling interests and collaborative opportunities.
Great. So we have lots of works to do now. So that is good. So would you have something to say to the faculty members in each one of your areas who are interested in this program? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd say just do it. It's a wonderful experience. But we have a long history with UPAEP. We send our students there. We know what an excellent institution it is, and so you can trust the experience that you'll have there. So my advice is, if it interests you, it's not easy, is it, Abby? It's not easy, but the benefits, the fruits are amazing. So yeah, my advice would be go for it.
Yes, it's certainly not easy. It's challenging, but it's one of those challenges that would change the way you look at things, the way your teaching practice develops. And it's a necessary challenge, particularly with teachers who have a well-established trajectory and are looking for ways to improve or to change, or just to have a different perspective on things. Well, that in and on itself is already a good approach to look at the program, but also I'm always reminded of the things we share. We share more than a border, right? There are issues that I was made aware throughout this program that are perhaps more subtler, but that involve this bilateral approach to education, right? I know we're different countries, but in some form or degree, we do share our culture, even if we're not as aware of it. And so that I think it's an interesting way of looking at a relationship between two universities across the border.
Perfect. So thank you so much, both of you, for being the pioneers in beginning this program. I am very grateful, and I know that on behalf of NDI and all Notre Dame community, I want to thank you for being the pioneers in this program. So I hope that all the efforts, and I am witness of all the things that you have gone through to be able to begin with this program. So thank you very much.
And Lisette, you didn't mention it in the introduction, but I think it's important that people know what an instrumental part of this whole process you were, not only in its conception, but in moving through all of the many pieces that had to happen, and in your support on the ground. So thank you. Really, this is the gift of your hands, to both universities. That we thank you for that too.
And thank you, Elena, for coming up with the idea and for keeping through even after the pandemic and all the obstacles that we had to overcome. I think we've managed very well. So thank you, both of you, and all the people that were involved. Thank you so much.
And you too, Abby. So.
You got me, because I was going to end this conversation by saying thank you to everybody, mainly to the two of you, and to Florence Grullo here in Puebla, and to Angie Appleby back at Notre Dame. So thank you everyone. There are more people that they were involved, but I wanted to just say thank you to the two of them and the two of you. So
thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.